Welcome to VoteProPot-Cast, the award-winning cannabis news podcast brought to you by VoteProPot.com. Here are your hosts, Phil Adams, Jay Britton, and Andrew McCreadies.
High Times has bought 13 dispensaries. We're going to talk about that because it wasn't long ago that we were almost sounding the death knell for that particular organization. 5 reasons why cannabis was named an essential business. I think I know what a few of them are, but we're going to get to those in depth. Also, here in Maryland, we have our first drive-through dispensary, which is pretty cool. Where's that located?
Edgewater, Maryland.
Edgewater.
Actually, now they have that, and they have a second location.
So we got that. We got a lot of stuff to cover.
A second location in Kokomo Beach, Indiana.
Inside joke.
Well, thanks everybody for joining us today here on Vote Pro Podcast on this lovely Cinco de Mayo.
Ribe! All right.
Riba.
I've got some very nice Herradura Especial tequila that I'm going to be doing shots of.
Yeah. I put salt on the rim of my bong.
There you go. Now we're talking.
Yeah. So we're all here to celebrate, and we hope you're in a celebratory mood. And if you're not, we hope we can lift your mood a little bit over the course of the podcast. So let's get right to it, shall we?
You know, I was thinking the other day what kind of long-term effect the coronavirus is going to have on cannabis. And I wanted to hear what you guys, if you have any thoughts on that. Like I was thinking, like, for example, I don't think you're going to be sharing joints with strangers as much in the future anymore.
Soon, yeah.
Right.
Well, it's not something I tend to do anyway.
Right. That's true. But then also, we've seen reports that because people are careful about their lungs, they're shying away from flower and vapes and going more towards edibles and tinctures. So I can see that sort of sticking around too. And also the fact that cannabis edibles is kind of a new industry, and that's improving, and they're coming up with new stuff every day. And the other fact that when you say cannabis edibles, that kind of includes beverages too, because I think infused beverage is
edibles and potables.
Infused beverages is just slowly gaining momentum, and one day it's just going to start skyrocketing.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of venture capital behind potables. At some point, there's a demand there that's pent up. I think at some point it's going to, like you say, take off. But I don't know. I think it all kind of depends on how permanently freaked out we are as a society by this. I tend to think, there's possibility that a lot of this stuff will linger, and then there's a possibility that when it's all said and done in a few months, this is all behind us, maybe we have a vaccine in the offing, people not scared of it anymore, and they say, screw it.
Yeah, I think once it's not on the news 24/7, and if they have treatment and they have a vaccine, I think it disappears. But that doesn't necessarily answer Andrew's question. I think the long-term effects could be legalization. I think a stronger push for it, just strictly, if nothing else, from an economic standpoint. The government's going to be scrounging for ways to raise monies because
and state governments, which is important to specify. The federal government,
I agree,
and we can see how this whole state by state differences as far as this coronavirus thing with all the resources that it's tapped is kind of bringing to light which states are efficient and financially secure, and which states are troubled.
True.
But I also think that there may be just a little factor about just the fact that we've all had to put everything on hold for a little while. We've had time to stop and reassess things, like this whole working from home thing. For example, people, a lot of business, I don't know if I want my people, I want them in the office. I don't know about this working from home thing. Well, now that it's been forced upon us, a lot of the, trepidations that people have been addressed. And maybe it's going to be a lot more widespread thing. And I think the same thing may be true with, I don't know about legalizing marijuana. It just doesn't seem like, there are some people are kind of on the fence. They've been brought up with this idea that it's a bad thing, and they're not sure they want to get on board with what that's always been called a bad thing. And now that we've all stopped and we've realized and we've seen things like drive-through dispensaries, and things like that we hadn't really wanted to dive into before, but now out of necessity we see it. Maybe it allays a lot of people's fears, and that stuff becomes more prevalent. I don't know.
I think a lot of people are going to see the financial benefits. That's for sure. I think short term, the pandemic. On the opposite, on the other hand, the pandemic has affected the rate at which regulations and legislation is being written up and passed. Obviously, because our legislature is so busy trying to save lives.
Oh yeah.
But I think it might have slowed the process, but I think it's increased the desire to do it.
That leads perfectly to an article, my first article, which is top marijuana CEOs argue that legalization could provide the American economy a necessary shot in the arm after the coronavirus pandemic. This is from High Green News by Brendan Bures. It was originally in The French Toast, one of my sites I go back to all the time. When the fog clears from the coronavirus pandemic and the coronavirus pandemic lifts and the threat subsides, Americans will discover an economy in serious need of repair. Most up-to-date reports indicate that more than 26 million Americans have filed for unemployment, erasing the 22 million jobs gained since the recession of 2009. So think about that for a minute.
Yeah.
Since 2009, that's 11 years, we've had a consistent increase in jobs. They're gone. They're all already. And this goes on for another month or two. That could just be blown out of the water. Here's some facts for you. Every state outside of Massachusetts has deemed adult use marijuana business as essential during the coronavirus pandemic. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Many state governments have loosened laws around curbside pickup and dispensary delivery in both medical and recreational markets. Marijuana use hit an all-time high amid the coronavirus pandemic. That's kind of interesting,
No pun intended.
I don't know how many people. I don't know how people saw that coming. $56 billion with a B dollars. That's the current value of the American marijuana market, according to estimates. The problem?
The legal marijuana market? Or the marijuana market?
The marijuana market, but listen to this. In 2020, the black market captured 90% of that.
Yeah. See.
So you've got $56 billion in revenue, and that's, of course, an estimate because they can't know exactly what the black market is. 90% of that's not being taxed.
Right.
It's just crazy. One of the programs that the federal government used after the Great Depression, the first thing they did is sit down and say, man, the first thing we got to do is raise revenue without killing people because they need the money too. Yeah. So what did they do? They got rid of prohibition, right? And that raised millions and millions of dollars, and that's in 1930s money. So today, alleviating the prohibition for cannabis would raise literally billions of dollars for federal, state, and local jurisdictions, right? Because the feds are going to tax it, the local states are going to tax it, and even the jurisdictions are going to have licensing fees and so forth. So.
Right, and when there's money involved, things start to happen, right. and when the only question is, do they realize the money that is involved? And when states like Illinois and California and New York, which are in
bankrupt
not
anyway.
good financial shape, they have to do something to pay those huge government employee union contracts.
That's what it boils down to. Yeah.
And they got to do something to pay for that, and they don't have the funds. And with this pandemic, they've been tapped, I should say, to an extent they hadn't anticipated.
Nobody did, yeah.
And they're going to look for that revenue. And
yeah, I mean, I think you're onto something there, Phil.
Of course, Illinois things are already legal, but not
California. They're legal.
California, they're legal, but New York has some work to do. And when they when they start realizing these revenues, other governors are, they watch what the other states are doing.
Well,
they're going to say,
I think the perfect example is New
Damn.
Jersey. New Jersey is in worse condition of all the states in the union, from what I've read, in terms of their deficit per capita.
right.
And they don't have legal yet. So, I mean, they'll be the first in line. Andrew talked about in one of his reports recently, we know New Jersey's working on it, and they're close. But
Right.
so the bottom line to me is this. The cannabis industry is considered an essential industry, right? Pretty much across the board.
Medical, yep.
And yet it's illegal.
Do you think that, for example, in California, if they lowered the taxes and gave the retailers the opportunity to compete with the black market, they would actually increase the amount of money they'd taken in taxes with a lower tax rate?
It's worked every other time in the country with every instance.
Every time they've lowered tax rates, tax revenues go up.
Increase.
It's a no-brainer.
You can't argue it.
It's an absolute no-brainer. It's historical fact.
Yeah, I do think you're right. I do think that would work. But also, I think the problem is, in California, you can go out and buy black market cannabis, but a lot of it, as we've pointed out, is gray market. I mean, they're buying it elsewhere, but
buying it legally and selling it illegally.
And you know where one of the biggest problems in that gray market area is? I know especially in California, and in New York as well, and that is delivery services. Now, the thing about in California, there's a lot of legitimate delivery services, but there are some that aren't. But the legitimate and the illegal delivery services were all advertising on Weed Maps. So if we remember this from a past story.
Well, I remember. And then Weed Maps was forced to kind of make the distinction and police it a little more.
Well, to police a little more, I think they took out some of they took out all the illegal operators that were advertising on Weed Maps, but the delivery services is sort of hard to control. So I think the cops are leaving it, letting them do that, because it's like shooting fish in a barrel. Every time they want to arrest someone, let's go to Weed Maps. There's a list of illegal criminals there.
Yeah, what's the fun in that?
Yeah. I think, Andrew, part of the problem, California's different in one way, and that is that it's so huge geographically. I mean, it's just a huge piece of land. Yeah. And so we did a report on that a few weeks ago. The number of dispensaries per square mile or whatever, however you want to say it, in California, I mean, it's not uncommon to live somewhere where the closest dispensary is 4 hours away because the state's so big. So delivery really doesn't come into play there. They're not going to deliver something that's 4 miles away. Then it becomes a question of what about mailing it?
Or shipping it.
Shipping is what I meant to say. The U.S. Postal Service, if it was legal to ship it, like it is other, non-narcotic drugs, I get my blood pressure medicine in the mail. I get my heart medicine in the mail.
Well, you can buy alcohol in the mail.
The other thing about California is California has at least 4, maybe 5 major urban areas.
True.
Los Angeles, San Francisco, San Diego, Sacramento, at least those 4 are major.
More. That's true.
So delivery in urban areas, that accounts for the lion's share of the population in California.
Well, the problem is the dispensaries are so sparse, and so many areas have outlawed cannabis retail operations.
Yeah.
That the only way you can get it is to get it delivered.
That's right.
Okay.
So I can't remember the number. We did a report a couple weeks back on that, and I was shocked at the percentage of jurisdictions in California that are essentially dry markets.
I mean, you can possess it, you just can't sell it.
You can't sell it. Yeah,
you just can't sell it. You can't get a license to sell it. Well, that sort of happened. Now we saw in Arizona before the pandemic hit and everyone got locked down. There were some delivery services. They allowed delivery services in Arizona. And one company in particular said that in February, they had 9,500 deliveries. Now, in March, they had 37,000 deliveries.
Whoa. Wow. Right. Yeah, that's a bit of an increase.
That's kind of a jump.
Damn. Right. And as we say, here in Maryland, we had our first dispensary that has a built-in drive-through. That would be the first in Maryland.
Now, that's right. Maryland, where is that?
Edgewater, Maryland. No, it just seemed, I think that's also one we were talking about long-term effects that the pandemic's going to have. I think it's going to be delivery. We're going to realize, as Phil was saying earlier, how essential some of these things are.
Right.
So we're like, wait a minute, delivery is kind of good, and it's just, let's areas that didn't allow it are now going to say, we're allowing it for the pandemic, and I'm feeling they're going to say, and we're just going to keep it. We're not going to
and how not
stop
scary they are. Now,
Yeah,
now that we've tried it, we've been forced to try it, it's not a scary thing anymore.
And I think it might go into, as you were saying, it might evolve into, just let them ship it, man. Let UPS tail it. What the fuck, Also, we're talking about a half an ounce or something like that. That's
small
it's not
quantities.
it's not enough value to commit a crime.
Right.
Even the hardcore potheads going, well, I'm not going to commit a friggin' felony.
Mail fraud's a big deal. That's a felony.
Stealing from the post office for a couple joints, for a bag of gummies. That's just idiot. Especially in states where it's legal, where you just go to a friggin' store and buy it.
Yeah.
Right.
High Times was in the news a lot last year, and they were in some financial trouble themselves, were they not, Jay?
Yeah, that was the story. I mean, as recent as just a few months ago, we did it, and they were just strapped for cash.
And they hired a new president / CEO,
Stormy Simon. Stormy Simon.
Oh yeah, Stormy
is her name.
High Times,
the other Stormy.
No, High Times is. I think now they were going through some financial problems, and they're going, man, how are we going to stay afloat? And I think the smartest thing, if this is Stormy's decision, hats off to her. It's like, well, we're like the most popular brand in cannabis. It just makes sense for them to go into the retail industry. That they can keep High Times afloat forever if they just own some dispensaries.
So here's the story from John Janaroni from IPO Edge. High Times Holding, owner of the well-known magazine, entered a purchase agreement to buy 13 active and planned retail dispensaries from Harvest Health and Recreation, Inc. for $80 million in cash and stock, giving the company an almost instant foothold in California's cannabis market. High Times plans to take advantage of its expertise and brand. That's the key word, their brand.
Right.
The most well-known in the industry, to convert the Harvest locations into High Times shops, complete with the company's logo and its aesthetic theme. So I think this is really interesting. Andrew was just saying how, and Phil mentioned how people were saying they were done. They were going to close the magazine. Right. They had no money. They changed leadership. And what they've come up with, the first thing they did is offer stock for the company. Let's see what happens. Our valuation sucks, but we're going to go ahead and see what happens. And guess what? High Times sold public shares, but they haven't yet begun to trade because they're not on the exchange yet. The company has over 27,000 investors who have subscribed to offering up to $50 million. So that's how Stormy came about raising cash.
That's how she had the cash to buy those dispensaries.
And the key here is not the cash necessarily; it's the stock. Now they have stock issued, and it's not on the exchange, but it's issued. And she's buying this, essentially making these acquisitions with stock. In other words, people believe so much in the name and the brand that they're willing to say,
and the industry.
In the industry, exactly.
Well, everyone wants to invest in cannabis.
Right.
And it's pretty much a no-brainer. There's going to be some High Times dispensaries. I think I might invest in that.
I hadn't thought of it before, but it makes so much sense.
And the way they went about it, selling it's brilliant.
It would be like if Coca-Cola bought up a bunch of malt shops.
Right.
It would bring back the old malt shop.
The Harvest dispensaries will be part of a vertically integrated model High Times has developed through acquisitions. Last month, High Times said it would acquire California-based cannabis holding company Humboldt Heritage, Inc., that we've heard of, along with its subsidiaries, Hobart Sun Growers Guild and Grateful 8 LLC. The acquisition equips High Times with cannabis growing, processing, and product manufacturing capabilities direct from the most coveted cannabis community in the world, Humboldt County.
Wow.
So kudos to High Times. We're glad you're back, and man, we're behind you 100%.
Way to go, Stormy. We talk about cannabis being an essential business, and I guess we mean mostly medical cannabis. I guess there are different reasons for different people as to why they're considered essential, but it's kind of an odd thing that, like you say, it's essential but it's illegal. The hell is that?
Well, a lot of states have definitely deemed cannabis especially medical cannabis, an essential business. And as I believe, only Massachusetts closed down their recreational dispensaries. So, but a lot of people came out, like a lot of organizations came out, and they definitely advocated to the powers to be for making cannabis an essential business. Now, some of those organizations are the Marijuana Policy Project, Veterans Cannabis Project, Veterans for Natural Rights, Clergy for a New Drug Policy, the Epilepsy Foundation, Doctors for Cannabis Regulations, Law Enforcement Action in Partnership, and the Students for Sensible Drug Policy, to name, as well as Vote Pro Pot.
Yes, count VoteProPot into that.
Well, a lot of people came up and said, guys, we really need to do this. And so they really came up with 5 reasons why cannabis is an essential business. And let me list those 5. First, cannabis is a crucial part of the treatment regimen of hundreds of thousands of individuals for everything from insomnia to chronic pain, etc. Number 2, many who have vulnerable immune systems because of their advanced age or a serious medical condition consume medical cannabis. And these are people that are sometimes have terminal diseases or have very compromised immune systems.
Right.
And they're barely hanging on, and this really helps them. And it would be cruel to first allow them to take it and then go, well, you can't have it now.
We've changed our mind.
Yeah. Right. Number 3, some patients use cannabis to quell chemotherapy-induced nausea and appetite loss, and everyone knows cannabis is the number one treatment for nausea.
And if everyone doesn't know it, they should.
Right. So that's another one. I mean, all these chemotherapy. I mean, people, just because everyone has this coronavirus doesn't mean cancer isn't still around. Right. Number 4, patients administer cannabis to alleviate agonizing pain or PTSD. They're finding more and more, some of these veterans finding great relief using cannabis to treat their PTSD. So, again, I think these are people that we deserve to do, that earned our support to do whatever we can to make it feel better. Obviously.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they protect our freedom. They should have a little of their own.
Right, absolutely. Now, the 5th and last is the uncertainty created by the crisis is compounded by the prospect of losing access to a treatment option that is essential to patients' well-being.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it goes without saying,
Yeah, I really think, and as well as, come on, I mean, if you're letting liquor stores and beer and wine places stay open,
Right. And Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Right, that's an argument for recreational cannabis. But as far as medical reasons, I mean, that's a no-brainer, guys. How can you even comprehend taking medical, treatment away from hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people?
Right?
Yeah.
Patients.
Well, it really is. It all connects to the Federal Controlled Substances Act, because as long as the federal government has deemed it illegal and is in a position to enforce it, whether they actually do or not, and things like banking and all of the other things on a national level, it's there's going to be that impediment to the states and localities opening this up, as they should. Now, as far as one aspect of it, just the CBD part. Now, this is from an article from 420 Intel. Earlier this month, a well-known drug manufacturer received word that a CBD-based medication will no longer be regulated under the United States Controlled Substances Act. We remember when we were first talking about the late Charlotte Figge. One of our first episodes, we talked about this drug, Epidiolex. It's a medication made with CBD, and we all know what that is, and showed remarkable results. And so, that was kind of allowed to be, that was kind of the leading edge of the legalizing of CBD. But there's still a lot of up in the air about it all, because
it's a lot of gray area. I mean, because we don't know how these hemp farmers and people are, the whole CBD industry, they can't put it in food. but some people are putting it. I mean, it's really tough. Meanwhile, you have all these hemp farmers that grew over 100,000 acres of the stuff, and it's just sitting there, and no one knows what to do with it.
Mold, right?
Well, yeah.
Instead of money.
But the CBD products are still illegal, or the anything that's non-epidiolex. I think they got some kind of special dispensation. Yeah. They're still regulated under the FDA, under the Controlled Substances Act. And
that's bullshit.
Well, but the safety they're saying that their safety profile has, quote, not been established. Well, that's ridiculous. Now the FDA has clarified their stance, but it's really, they've clarified it they've really just muddied the waters, They released a 27-page report nearly 2 years ago in which they argued that CBD is associated with a very low risk profile. And then from that report, upon consideration of the 8 factors, they said, determining control of a substance under section blah, 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 the FDA concludes that CBD could be removed from the Controlled Substances Act. But, so did they remove it from the Controlled Substances Act? Is CBD legal? Is it not legal? It's really still pretty confusing.
Yeah, they were supposed to turn that around pretty quickly, the regulations. And what's it been, like a year and a half now or something?
Right. So it comes down to it's legal.
Right.
But it's not 100% legal. It's legal, but it's highly regulated. So
that's putting it mildly.
So, but well,
it's almost like it's legal, but you can't do anything with it.
Right. No, and that's funny, but it's right. True. Yeah.
Or you make CBD oil or a tincture.
Right.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
But you can't sell it and you can't deliver it, and it's highly, highly regulated. And if they can't get any further than that on the federal level with CBD,
right? What does that tell you?
What does that tell you about trying to get THC taken off the CSA? It's a big rat's nest, and until that gets solved,
well, let me ask you
we're
this:
still going to have that roadblock.
Do you think it's individuals within the FDA that are causing this problem?
I mean, no idea.
Granted, there's always red tape involved with any government agency. That goes without saying. But this has been insane because when they decided CBD was going to be legal, they set forth to provide regulations in writing within a certain amount of time. I don't remember what it was now, but it was like 90 days or something. And They're well beyond that, and they haven't done shit.
Right. And I think the problem is that there is so much involved and so many things to consider about it that you can't really have regulation by committee. Somebody, there's got to be some leadership and some direction from, I would say from the top down. I would say from the White House and on down, and or from Congress. Congress is the one setting the laws. Yeah. Congress has to declare this to be legal.
There you go.
And there's nothing FDA can do about it. Or there is something they can do about it. They can take it to court.
Right.
But
there you go. That's what it boils down to.
That's what it boils down to. We have to elect people to Congress who are pro-pot.
Where have I heard that before?
So vote pro-pot.
And the Senate.
Well, yeah.
Well, something, guys. I don't think cannabis on the federal level, and this is an early call, guys, will not be legalized in 2021.
No, you don't think?
They can happen in 2020.
I'm becoming more pessimistic.
In 2021.
I think it might be right,
I don't know.
Ain't going to happen as long as Trump's in office. He won't do it. He won't let it happen. I believe.
I wonder. I question that.
And if he gets reelected, he's not going to do it. And even if Biden gets it or whoever else, maybe. I guess it's nothing set in stone yet. But
I don't think Trump is the roadblock here.
No, it's Congress.
Well, he's part of it. He's one of these. He's a speed bump. That's for sure.
I think the bigger question is the Senate. More
Right.
than the president.
Well,
All the
big time.
president
Yeah.
has to do is sign a bill. That's not the problem.
Yeah,
I think the problem is
the fellow that
Congress.
we had in who is the lobbyist.
It's Mitch McConnell's the I think it's the roadblock.
He seemed fairly convinced that Trump will sign a bill if it's handed to him.
But Andrew's point is, will Mitch McConnell ever let
nothing's
that
going to
vote?
get by Mitch
Yeah.
McConnell.
Well, that's more a roadblock. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Well, we could go on talking about this stuff all day, but thank God we're out of time. So
That's what the audience is saying.
But we're very happy you joined us for this time. And if you had a nice experience with Vote Pro Podcast, tell a friend about it. Give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. What else, Jay?
Send us an email, podcast@VoteProPot.com. Share an episode or the show with your friends on your podcast player. Call our message line at 240-257-2441.
There's so much going on in the world of cannabis, and we cover all of it on our podcast. But if we miss something, every bit of it, every little thing that happens every week, we cover all of it on our
30
podcast.
minutes.
If we didn't cover it, it didn't happen.
It didn't happen. It's fake news. But if you find something we might have missed, please share it with us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and the Twitter. Just do a search for Vote Pro Pot.